Welcome back to Conservative Conversations. This is our
50th episode.
I'm your host, Reid.
And I'm your host with the fake name, Frank.
Today we'll be talking about Trump's indictment with an eye towards the primary elections, hearings about the Afghanistan withdrawal, the expansion of the FDIC, and more. So let's start the show. Alright, so to start it off, we're going to sort of be talking about the recent Trump indictment on April 4th. He was arraigned in, I believe, Manhattan, and the charges were read, and it was revealed that the DA is charging 34 counts of business fraud and falsifying documents, and this is all related to the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels in 2016, just before the election. But it's not really the indictment itself that I particularly want to focus on. I do believe that, as we previously talked about, it is kind of a political witch hunt that they're going after him. There's plenty of lawyers on the left and the right who don't think there's really any good case here.
Well, yeah, I mean, for instance, I don't know if you would have brought this up, but I'm pretty sure she even lost a defamation case that Trump brought against her, or vice versa. I don't know, but I think she had to pay him some kind of money.
Yeah, I believe it came out like the day before or same day of his arraignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I remember seeing the quote that she wasn't going to pay him a penny.
Right.
Something like that. There's a headline like that out there.
Right.
So, I mean, how do you go from that?
Right.
From that to this.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of people who don't think there's much there, and it could be dismissed, but who knows. But what I wanted to focus on is looking forward to the primaries for the election next year. And this certainly has juiced up Trump's poll ratings amongst the base, for good reason, I think. I believe the last time we talked about it, and even just as I mentioned, it's basically a political witch hunt against him, and they're always out to attack him. But I don't think this should be any kind of rallying cry to start supporting Trump, because I still don't think he's necessarily the right candidate for the general election, and I think between now and then, people in the Republican Party are really going to have to start thinking about it pretty seriously if he is the guy that we should push for getting the nomination. Because I don't think he has that great of a shot against, if it is Biden, that he has to go against in the general election.
Really?
No. Because the best case he has, and he'd have to really stay focused on it, and I don't see him doing it, is that he has to push the comparison of, this 4 years of Biden compared to his term before, and how good it was compared to how bad it is now. But he still keeps bringing up the 2020 election, and how he still thinks he was robbed of it. And I can agree that he was in certain ways, not necessarily the ways that he believes he was, but
I think that's half the point, though. Is he really believes it.
Right. Well, I'm sure he does, and
you know how repetitive that man is.
Yeah.
I mean, when he gets something in his head.
Right. And if he can't move past that and focus on, like what I mentioned, is really pointing out the comparison of the two administrations, there certainly isn't going to be a whole lot more people who didn't vote for him last time that are going to switch their vote this time. Yeah, and this, more of this baggage that he has with all these various lawsuits he's got, like in Georgia regarding the elections there, this case that we were already talking about in Manhattan. I just don't see that many more people who are just going to vote for him this year, or not this year, but this time, who didn't last time. And especially if it's already Biden, I believe this roughly the same number of people would probably vote for him again.
Well, I think
Especially,
that's really interesting.
especially if, like I said, Trump can't focus on the positive aspects of his of his last term.
Well, I definitely have a few things to say on that. I mean,
Sure.
I wasn't sure exactly when I should jump in, but
Well, the only other thing I would say is that, in my personal opinion, I just think it's time to move past him and, pick somebody new who.
well, I totally hear you.
Right.
But I'm going to try and make some good points, and I think it really
Sure.
leads into some of the other topics we're going to cover here
Okay,
today. I
yeah.
mean, for instance, I'll just hint, our next segment, the next segment that we're going to go into. It
Mhm.
was, no matter who came up with the plan, it was Biden who did that botched withdrawal of Afghanistan.
Sure.
He's on tape saying things like, this was before he became president. He's on tape saying to crowds of people, "What do you want us to do? Just pack up, pack up our people, bring home our boys, and leave helicopters sitting there and leave tanks sitting there."
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what he did. It's another one of those, you can show proof of him saying 6 years ago that he would never do such a thing. Then as soon as he gets power,
Right.
that's exactly what he does.
Well,
It's
sure.
what he said he would never do. I mean, so I think there are people who voted for Biden because he wasn't Trump. And now that they've been able to see, there have been obvious examples of how out to lunch this guy is. You know what I mean? I mean, he's not there.
Right.
And most of the party, I don't think, wants him to run. The AOCs of the world don't want him back out there.
Right.
And one of the things I definitely wanted to mention is, you're talking about Trump was beating DeSantis in some of the new polling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because, name recognition, and he's out there, he's back in the news
Sure.
and stuff like that.
Right.
And out of sight, out of mind, nobody's really thinking about DeSantis so much, even though he might be a more attractive candidate,
Right.
especially to the masses, at large. Anyway, I hope you get what I mean.
Yeah.
But I definitely also wanted to plug that we have some reporting from one of our staff writers over at our website, contemporaryconservative.net, on that very topic, some of the Trump polling and DeSantis. Anyway, there's an article up there. But then I've also seen, as part of that reporting, I saw that Trump is going after some of DeSantis's donors, some of his biggest donors right now. So
Right.
not only is he swinging some of these new poll numbers over from DeSantis to himself, but supposedly he's getting some of DeSantis's big mega donors. And, they're both based right there out of Florida now.
Yeah.
So, I find that interesting. And then there's also some other things going on out there. You have to think of who else is going to be in the field, who else is going to throw their hat in the ring. And I saw an article a few days back about this Caitlyn Jenner. She's supposedly going to make a run, I think. She started this Fairness First PAC, PAC, she's calling it now. So usually they do that. They start testing the water, doing that, gathering the money and stuff like that before they go on these runs. So she'll probably be out there on the stage, trying to get the nomination at least anyway. I think, we'll see, but I have a hunch. And then I just saw an article. This is just loosely linked, but I found it interesting, and I just saw it either today or yesterday, about that Tiger King guy, Joe Exotic, is saying that he's going to run for president on the Democratic ticket.
Right.
Now, something has to happen first. I don't know. He's got to get some kind of approval or something. Dude's sitting in jail or prison or something.
Right.
But anyway, I just thought that's hilarious. And what I found, not exactly hilarious, but interesting, and that's why I'd bring it up here as part of this conversation, is he talks about wanting to be on the debate stage with Joe Biden and wanting to be able to say some stuff to him about how even Joe Exotic, is famously gay. He was gay in that episode. They made a big deal out of the relationship he had with his boyfriend or boyfriends or whatever it was. I don't know. But even he makes a point of saying that this LGBT and the trans stuff should not be pushed on anyone younger than 18 or 21, something like that. He doesn't think that and he wants to run on the Democratic ticket and say that kinds of stuff.
Right.
Okay. And there's other examples. That's just an important one, and it's related to the fact that Caitlyn Jenner, I mean, she would probably agree with that too. So I think there's going to be a big injection of reason this cycle, hopefully, even if, it's not from some of the best candidates. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. I was mostly just interested in you saying that Trump couldn't beat Biden because I guess I'm just so red that I feel like a peeled potato could win against Joe Biden.
Right. Well, I mean, I think I do believe that if it's not Biden, it's other name versus Trump in the general election, he probably would have a better shot. It's depending on who it is. And as I've said before, if he is on the general ticket, absolutely, I am going to vote for Trump. But at this point, at least as far as the primaries go, which come up sooner, he's not my pick. And maybe my pick will not be on the list. Who knows?
On the list?
Maybe they won't end up running. Or by then they will have dropped out. Who knows what's going to start happening around
I think,
January.
just speaking of this, I think I saw that Mike Pompeo's probably going to put his hat in the ring.
Yeah, I've been seeing lots of names. Mike Pence.
Oh, give me a break. The fly guy.
Fly guy.
Yeah, remember he had that in one of the debates, the vice president, he had the
yeah.
fly sitting on his forehead or whatever it was, in his hair for the whole thing, basically.
Yeah. But yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of people jumping in. So yeah, it's hard to tell.
Well, anyway, I guess that leads us, I sort of hinted at where we'd go with the next topic. And it's that, now that the Republicans have the House, the Oversight and Accountability Chairman, James Comer from Kentucky, they have been doing some hearings focusing on the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. And, this is something that we've discussed before on the channel. I feel like is almost criminal. This is another one of those. I'm sure I know what I compared it to. Hillary Clinton and the Benghazi thing. And
right.
What's it matter now? They're already dead. Forget about it. Let's move on type of thing. So I think it's really great that they're having these hearings and, are going to call into question just how poorly that was orchestrated. And I think it'll help, I think we led into it well, bringing up the primaries and everything like this. And we'll get some good sound bites from some of Biden's advisors and that kinds of things. And it really was a tragedy. 13 American servicemen lost their lives. And I don't know. I think that's one of the things. I have another article that I saw put out by the New York Post that talks about how veterans in particular were horribly affronted at what they saw, in that debacle.
Right.
They're blaming corrupt politicians and saying that they are denying, which is exactly what they're doing, denying that they caused any sort of a problem or that it was chaotic or, it's that whole let's move on kind of thing again.
Right.
And I just find that interesting. I hadn't planned on going there, but I hear myself saying it. And if you remember, it was Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State at that time, the Benghazi thing.
Yeah.
And Mike Pompeo, we just said his name. I'm pretty sure he was the chairman of the Oversight Committee when they were having the Benghazi hearings, if I'm not mistaken, okay? And he wound up in her job after those hearings. So they can be powerful. You know what I mean?
Right,
So I'm sort of looking forward to seeing where this goes, if anything good comes of it. But I already feel like, just in what I've said, the good sound bites, the good sort of publicity, sort of negative publicity for Biden.
Right.
But I just really look forward to, and it's something I know we've called for, that they should have some sort of hearing, or there should be some sort of accountability
Right.
for essentially what they did.
Yeah. Yeah, they one of the things they keep trying to do is say that their hands were tied by, the choices Trump made before, but I think you pointed out, it was no matter who made the agreement to pull out, it was Biden who made the move to.
Yeah.
And I assume and hopefully we'll find out from the hearings, if how much options they really had at the time, because it made it seem like they didn't have any choice.
Well, I know they did. There was a lot of discussion at the time, and Trump piped up, of course. He doesn't keep quiet on anything. And he was out there saying, this is not what I bargained for.
Mm-hmm.
And they could have done it this way. I know he put out statements on, I remember how they handled it. This is what we do in a sense. We follow the news. We enjoy this sort of thing.
Right.
And I remember, it's almost like they pushed it right up to the date. They didn't do anything. They didn't take any sort of steps, preliminary steps.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, it's the 17th of
August,
August,
yep,
and
we
we
gotta
gotta
go.
be out, and
See ya.
yeah, and that's because Trump made this agreement. Oh, that Trump, we just gotta leave everything behind. Everybody get out right now. Drop that pencil. Leave it there.
Well, even if it, that being the case, if Trump made the agreement, when did that stop the Biden administration from ignoring anything that Trump's administration did? Like day one.
Yeah, exactly.
Day one, he came in and undid several things that the Trump's administration
Exactly.
did.
Well, and then I think we both also remember that one of the first things they did was abandon the airfield.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And then it's like, oh, we can't get everybody off the base because we abandoned the planes first.
Yeah, so they all had to go to the civilian airport in the middle of the city, Kabul.
It was a joke, man. And I can remember it. I don't have to pull up these articles and date them. I remember the reactions. And I think in that way, it's kind of sad that that's all they're going to do. I often call these House things show trials, and that's really all it is, because we saw, and that's what I'm hoping for in this election, is smart people, no matter what stripe you are, red or blue or whatever.
Right.
Smart people know that was horribly mishandled.
Right.
I don't see why you have to get so political over something that we all know to be true. It was horribly handled.
Right. But yeah, you mentioned, when we talk about, as you said, we often call these hearings and stuff show trials.
Right.
And hopefully there will be some kind of accountability, but even if there's not, it's good to know really what happened, the transparency of the situation of it all. Getting the info out to the public, letting them know exactly how it happened and who exactly caused it.
I get what you're saying, like a comprehensive truth on what actually occurred.
Right.
I just think it's sad that that's how government works, though, is that everything's... this happened years ago now, basically. We're already moving on. Everybody's talking about, is Joe Biden going to run? So I don't know. I guess maybe in a way I'm making myself sound foolish, because I'm hoping people will remember. But instead, all they're talking about is Joe Biden and just wanting to move forward. So I don't know. We'll just see what comes of it, I guess. I hope some good will come of it, too. I just know these things usually don't bear any real weight. I think of Lois Lerner,
Oh, yeah.
Nothing happens to these people.
But yeah, hopefully, some of these hearings aren't going to be too show trial-y, and at least some good info will come out of them.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a good transition to our next topic, but it is about...
Transitioning?
Okay, there we go. I guess that's it.
Somebody very famously transitioned.
Good one, Frank. But yeah, it's about this Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light and all this hoopla. But most particularly that I'm going to talk about is another famous person, Joe Rogan, famous podcaster I'm sure most people know about, and his take on it. Because Joe Rogan's a smart guy. I've listened to some of his shows before, and he is certainly a person of the left. Maybe not far left, I wouldn't say that at all, but I think he might possibly argue he's more moderate, but my opinion would be that he's slightly left of moderate. But he's typically a reasonable guy. But his take, and I got a few quotes written down here on this situation, and if anybody doesn't know, I believe it was on April Fool's Day, April 1st, Bud Light put out a video on social media, I guess, because I don't think it was like an ad on TV, maybe it was, but it featured Dylan Mulvaney, who is a man pretending to be a woman, and who's been in several sponsorship deals with companies over the past year or so. But Bud Light made a can with this man's face on it, Dylan Mulvaney. Probably looks like a woman though,
He actually, whatever. I think what's really confusing about that case is that he still goes by Dylan, which is, I don't know, not really a girl's name in my opinion, but... Anyway, he just had a surgery to feminize his face. And they went in and shaved off some of his bones.
Like jawline
and made him more angular or something. I don't know how to put it. More feminine. I'll put it that way.
Right.
So, yeah, he looks more like a girl more than ever, except he still doesn't have, mammary glands and
he's still not a woman,
right? But so yeah, they have this feminized picture of Dylan Mulvaney on their cane in rainbow, some sort of rainbow shading or something.
Right. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to abandon the quotes I have and just try to remember them because something has gone awry with my notes. But all right. One of the things that in Joe Rogan's clip, and I'll have a link to it in the show notes, one of the things he talks about is he starts off by saying something like all that Bud Light's trying to do is spread the brand to new groups of people. And he says something like, if something is good, why does it matter who has it, or something like that? Although he uses more colorful language. Which, from a marketing standpoint, I understand wanting to expand your target market, but he misses the point that a lot of people are upset about, because he also goes on to makes the comparison, like, if there's some cheesecake that everybody really likes, then all of a sudden a radical group like Antifa really likes the cheesecakes. Are we gonna not eat cheesecake? But then he also follows it up and says, then the Cheesecake Factory sent Antifa a cheesecake and said, congratulations, or 10 more years of chaos, something like that, celebratory cheesecake. Would we be against that? And it's interesting to me that he puts those two different arguments together when the latter one is actually correct. Yes, Joe Rogan, that would be a problem. And that's just what the problem essentially is. The people who are upset about the situation aren't mad or upset that trans people are drinking Bud Light. It's that this company is portraying and propagating what some people believe is like a perverse ideology that shouldn't necessarily be spread around. And also when he talks about if the Cheesecake Factory sent Antifa the cheesecake for 10 more years of chaos, it almost seems like he would still be okay with that. And I suppose if I could ask Joe Rogan, would you want Cheesecake Factory sending the cheesecakes to Antifa, telling them keep up the good work? I mean, I guess if from the principle of free speech, sure, but I don't think it's a good and moral thing for companies to be doing that. Just as, in this case, people don't believe it's good and moral for Bud Light to be going along with this trans ideology.
Well, I totally agree with you. I mean, I have a lot of opinions on this that go back a long ways. I mean, well beyond this Bud Light thing.
Sure.
I mean, to a certain extent, especially depending on what market niche we're talking about, I don't get why companies even advertise at all sometimes. I truly don't understand it. And especially this types of marketing, the whole woke marketing and all of that stuff. I don't understand it.
Right.
Because you think you make good paper towels, people will buy good paper towels. They'll seek out, they'll find the good paper towels.
Right.
I don't see why you need to come on the television and say, we make the best paper towels.
Right.
Because that would speak for itself in the data.
Right.
So I don't I've never really understood it. And I think sort of his example, whether you agree with it or not, I don't know, because it seems like a sort of false example.
Yeah. I think it is.
Because it's almost more like the Cheesecake Factory, instead of just producing good cheesecake, it's more like they're dyeing it rainbow colored and making you eat rainbow colored cheesecake when you would just rather have it the same old color it's always been.
Right.
Or it's almost like they're reminding you, to keep with that example, when they come and deliver your cheesecake to you, they say, remember, Antifa likes cheesecake too.
Right.
I mean, why do I need to be told that every time I go to have a cheesecake?
Right.
I don't need to be told who also likes the cheesecake. I just care about me eating the cheesecake and liking it. You should just care about me liking the cheesecake.
Right.
So I continue to be your customer. So that's just sort of a funny, I don't know, sort of non-example. I don't really like that.
Well, I mean, as I sort of said, that the people who are upset at this don't care if trans people are drinking Bud Light or not drinking Bud Light.
Right.
Like in Joe Rogan's video, whoever he's talking with, I don't know his name. They talk about Kid Rock, his stunt that he did shooting all those Bud Light cans.
Yeah.
I don't think even Kid Rock would care about a trans person drinking the Bud Light. It's that putting out these ads or whatever, these sponsorships, these videos,
Right.
with Dylan Mulvaney is sending the message that it's true and normal that a man can become a woman.
Right. Right.
That's
So
what
we're putting it up on a pedestal and help propagating the idea.
Yeah.
No, I totally understand. I mean, but that's one of the things that I also don't understand about people's reaction to this type of story, though, either. Because, I have a literature degree. So, well, some people know that. And, you often see what happens when you ban a book. When somebody goes crazy and they go, oh, my gosh, have you read this book? It's horrible. We got to get rid of it. We got to go.
People go read it.
Of course people go read it. They go, what's so bad about this book? And that's what I don't get about this whole thing either. I mean, I've seen lots of memes I don't watch TikTok, but, I've seen TikTok videos floating around the internet of people who have these Bud Lights and they're dumping them down the sink. And it's like, well, there goes your money, idiot. I mean, if you already had the beer, why not drink it? And surely you didn't go out and buy Bud Light just to dump it down, film yourself dumping it down the sink. So
sure, some people did.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to set up how I think. I mean, not to say that we're being foolish by discussing this, because it's something that's going on, but certain people, my mother, just families, household families all over the country, are now sitting and having conversations about this and saying, well, did you know about this? And honey, we can't have Bud Light anymore. And this is effectively subjecting people to it too.
Right.
Just the way it just bubbles up and keeps going and grows on itself like a cancer or something.
Right.
So the whole thing is dangerous. I don't see why people don't just go, oh, they did what? Bud Light did what? Doesn't bother me, whatever, whatever. I mean, and that's not to quietly consent, but it's just to sort of not make a big hullabaloo about everything either. I don't always understand that.
Right. Well, I'm, like I said, mostly wanted to point out what Joe Rogan has said, because he has so many listeners, and I feel like his argument that he's trying to make is just wrong, and he's like I said before. I think he's a smart guy. Maybe I didn't say before, but I think he is, and it's almost like he's just trying to virtue signal. But I will say, to give him credit, in the same video, he and the guy he was talking to that he had on a show were talking about this comedian, Shane Gillis, I think he said is his name.
Mm-hmm.
And he does this event, I don't know if it's every year or what, pretty often, called Protecting Our Parks. I think he puts on like a big comedy show. And it gets millions of views, he says. And Bud Light is all this guy drinks. And this comedian supposedly really generous, gives back to the community and stuff like that. And, the guy was talking to Joe Rogan, both of them even said, where's his can with Bud Light? And I would agree with that. And I just wanted to, be fair to Joe Rogan slightly. Because I think that is a good point to raise. There are other people that they could be promoting who are doing good things.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Well, and I would almost just wonder, because I really don't know, so I'm going to ask the question before we move on.
Sure.
Is Joe, like, sort of liberal on the whole transgender thing? Like,
I would say so, because one of the things that he also said in that video is that, and he points out, a lot of the people who are upset are usually pro freedom of speech and individual rights and whatever, stuff like that.
Yeah, I get where he's
and
going.
they think that Bud Light's pushing an agenda, and Joe and his guests say there is no agenda. But there is.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, he would be on the left.
Well,
of this
and I
issue.
almost wonder. See, now that makes me have a theory. Well, I already had the theory before I asked the question, but he's one of these Hollywood types, and they're big on that out there. So I almost wonder if he just hasn't drank the Kool-Aid in that regard because he is a celebrity.
Maybe, but he has on a wide variety of guests, even conservatives, like Ben Shapiro's been on his show. He's even had Alex Jones on his show. So I'm sure he's been Matt Walsh, who's very active in has been on his show. So I'm sure he's heard and has been presented the info on the trans ideology. So I don't know what it is. Maybe it just hasn't hit him yet. I don't know. But he's definitely heard it. He knows what the other side's saying about it. But right before we move on, I have heard, and not a sponsor, that Yingling is openly conservative.
Right on.
So if you want another choice of beer to go get Yingling.
Aren't they America's oldest brewed?
Might be.
I'm pretty sure.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure they are.
And like I said, not a sponsor, but that's an alternative choice, because that's one of the things that some people say, well, all these big companies own the same, the beers. I'm saying it backwards. All these beers are owned by the same company. So how do you get away from it? Well, Yingling's one of your choices that I know of from what I've heard.
And it's a good one, folks.
Yep. All right. So on to your final topic. What do we got?
All right. My final topic today is going to be, it's going to be a discussion on something that stems from an article that I was reading or something I was watching. I'm not sure. And it just quietly mentioned at the end that, it was some sort of interview of Dianne Feinstein, for goodness sakes. Janet Yellen.
Oh, wow.
That's a big difference there. But yes, so anyway, Janet Yellen was being interviewed, and just quietly at the end of it, it sort of mentions, or she did, that they might be expanding the FDIC. Yeah. Have you heard this?
I feel like I have. It's no surprise after this Silicon Valley Bank collapse and all that.
Well, let me just take your opinion. I haven't warmed up in any way. I haven't presented you any information or anything. But what do you think of that concept, the total expansion of FDIC? And remember, they're saying short term, but that if you're a student of
history, short term is usually never short term.
Well, and my favorite, Milton Friedman.
Oh yeah.
He said there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program. So they want to temporarily expand FDIC.
Right. I'm not really sure what I think about it because I don't have enough knowledge to really know what the broader implications of that might be. But I guess in a pro aspect of it, I don't know when the $250,000 number was set, but I know it's been that way for a long time. So if they're going to increase it, it doesn't seem too unreasonable. With inflation and causing the value of money to go down, stuff like that. But the anti-aspect of it, I guess what would come to mind is like it can incentivize more risk taking amongst larger banks because if they know the government's gonna bail out the people and the banks themselves, essentially, why not play hard with the money? So I don't really know.
Well, I'll tell you.
It's certainly something to keep track of and watch what could happen.
I'll tell you definitely what I think of it. I think it gets dangerously close, like Icarus, flying to the sun. Because the whole FDIC thing is sort of a joke. Okay, this is just me talking to you and the people here, but just Frank talking. But the whole FDIC thing is kind of a joke and was just rolled out as sort of to allay people's fears. Okay, and it's this Ponzi scheme type of thing, just like Social Security, where supposedly the banks, right, have to make these deposits in this insurance scheme.
Right, to be considered FDIC insured.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and part of what that is the FDIC is supposed to sort of be this quasi-private entity that saves the money. That's what they do. They save that money in case there's ever a bank failure. They take those insurance deposits and save them up. And then when there's a run on a bank or a bank has a liquidity issue or whatever, they basically have to make an insurance claim. And the FDIC people, the insurance people, they go down into the vault and they get some of this money that's just been saved.
I can already guess that it seems like there's probably no money actually there.
Well, supposedly there is, and supposedly they're this quasi-separate entity thing. But the problem is that FDIC is an entity, right? And I often say the same sort of thing about unions. What do I always say about unions? They become a self-serving entity.
Yeah.
Okay? Because they have an administration.
Yeah.
They have a leader. They have a staff. They have costs. They have offices.
The bureaucracy is only to serve the bureaucracy.
Okay, but in this case, the bureaucracy of the FDIC starts eating up the deposits.
That makes sense.
Don't you see? So if they take in, let's just use easy numbers and say $1 million, and then they spend $1 million, how much is in the vault?
Right. There's nothing.
Nothing. Okay, and what does FDIC do when the vault's empty?
They go to the Treasury.
Of course they do, because they're a government agency.
Yeah.
So they just borrow from the Treasury. Okay. Well, these limits were placed. You're sort of saying, what's the $250,000 limit matter? Okay, well, in a sense, it doesn't, because really smart people, it's per account and per person.
Right.
So you and your spouse could both each have a bajillion accounts that are all at $250,000 a piece.
Right, and even like brokerage accounts will do this too.
Right. So I sort of do see the point that it's absolutely ridiculous, but it's in the same sort of sense that the insurance scheme is ridiculous. The whole thing is just a sort of ridiculous sort of piggybacking or distancing from the Treasury.
Right.
And I'm afraid, to me, I can read the writing on the wall. This is just going to be an expansion of the FDIC. It is basically eradicating the FDIC, except it still is an entity that's gobbling up government money now.
Right.
Right? Money that could otherwise be being paid into the Treasury or something, but it was being paid into the FDIC. So now the Treasury, I mean, it's just being robbed left, right, and center. Everything goes back to the Treasury. The Treasury is going to be bailing out every person in America, every corporation, any entity, dollar for dollar, with no limits.
I believe it.
Well, it's preposterous. It's absolutely preposterous. And similarly, with these bank failures going on again, did you see that Jerome Powell just is going to raise interest rates, or he just did raise interest rates? That interest rates are going up again. Well, it's because of that they're making all these other moves and things too.
Right.
The financial outlook right now is so bleak.
Right. Yeah.
That it's almost like they're preparing for. Now, I'm not trying to suggest any such a thing that it's, but I'm just reading the writing on the wall, because when I heard expansion of FDIC, I went, a what?
Yeah.
What? I mean, that's a much bigger deal than it sounds like, because basically the whole vault concept within the FDIC is gone. You're basically saying that there is no vault anymore. We're just going to open the whole thing up to the Treasury. And it's essentially, I mean, if you're a student of history, Social Security, a lot of these other programs, Social Security is definitely one. Where do you think that money is going to come from when Social Security's insolvent?
The Treasury.
Because they act like the same thing. That's a private fund. It's all just scary to me.
Right.
America's headed towards bankruptcy is what it looks like.
Yeah, because I'm sure in June, when it comes down to it, they're going to raise that deficit again.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's not going to be probably hardly any spending cuts or any good corrective measures. And if interest rates keep going up, part of what's causing trouble with these banks is that they, if people don't know what happens with banks, when you put your money in the bank, it isn't always just there. They use that money to lend it out, and one of the things they do that's particular to this situation is they buy bonds in the hope that they'll earn interest off those bonds, and then they can pay interest back to their depositors. Well, when you buy a long-term bond with a lower interest rate and the interest rates keep going up, your bond's not worth anything anymore. So a lot of the banks have been losing money on that because of the interest rates, and that's been causing part of the problem. So it's almost like all these different factors from the economic standpoint are going to just build up.
Yeah, or
like a bubble.
piggyback off each other. Yeah, like a bubble. Yeah, okay, yeah. You're exactly right. Well, and then if you think one more thing that I almost wanted to cover today, but, we usually try to keep these conversations pretty balanced, so I didn't want to add in a bunch more, and I'm not trying to fit something in now.
That's no problem.
But if you just think about something like how delicate the global situation is, with these moves being made by China and Russia and the military and Taiwan
these
and
BRICS countries,
North Korea and all this stuff.
Yeah.
If you think back to the pandemic and how there were supply chain issues and things got backed up for weeks, the ship getting stuck in the canal, it shut the world down for 3 days or whatever, 3 weeks. I don't remember. But, okay, you think about how broke we are. Imagine if something really bad did happen somewhere in the world and we did go to war. I mean, that would almost certainly be a death knell for America. I mean, how would we be able to... That would also be piggybacked on the Treasury, funding the war.
Right, yeah.
It's like the Treasury is literally... How could it have anything in it? It's going to get to that point.
Right, yeah. People have been talking about this for a while, because all we do is spend. Print money and print more money. The government. Well, that's our way out. Whatever the situation is, money.
Yep.
Put money in it. That'll fix it.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like I mentioned before on one of our past episodes, maybe as one of my predictions, I don't recall, that I think our economic situation's not going to be improving too much, even though it might look like it because stock markets have been up lately, but it ain't going to keep going up.
No.
And is that all you got?
Yep, that's it.
All right, I thought that was good. And listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, please be sure to leave a like, comment, or review wherever you're listening. We got the audio on YouTube, and we got the podcast on many platforms. Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio seems to be one of our popular spots to listen. And be sure to check out our website, because I believe we got some new posts up there, contemporaryconservative.net.
Yeah, and share us with a friend or two. And as always, thanks for listening.